This is Jim Fetzer, your host on Authentic News, right here on RBN Live, this 14th day of March, 2025. Or should I correct? It's the 14th. Here we go. Stories for today's show. Zelensky. Kiev won't cede territory, wants a strong U.S. response if Russia rejects a ceasefire proposal. But he's really not in a position to dictate. This is what he's having to say. President Zelensky explained his understanding of the ceasefire proposed by Ukraine and American officials this week, saying his country would not make any territorial concessions. Additionally, Kiev expects strong steps from President Trump should Moscow reject the plan. And of course it will. Discussing the ceasefire proposal Wednesday, Zelensky said, "We're fighting for our independence. Therefore, we will not recognize any occupied territories as Russia's. Our people have fought for this. Our heroes died. How many injured, how many passed? No one will forget about it. This is the most important red line. We will not let anyone forget about the crime against Ukraine." Except he's reversing history, revising it. The whole matter began in 2014 with a coup engineered by Victoria Nuland to depose the Russia-friendly president, impose a Western puppet of whom Zelensky is the successor. They began virtually immediately shelling the Donbass, populated by ethnic Russians, Russian speakers, Russian-friendly population. By the time of the intervention, they killed 2,000 in the Donbass and were about to undertake a mass murder, a slaughter in the Donbass when Putin intervened. That would be parallel to that taking place in Gaza by the Israelis. Meanwhile, Cass Freeman has talked about whether we might have here a Minsk III.
This is Curtis O'Brien.
We got. This guy is a very experienced diplomat.
Much as the Chinese and the North Koreans were, and the South Koreans in the Korean War. So what just happened in Jeddah was essentially a repositioning of Mr. Zelensky in Ukraine in favor of negotiations. I don't think there will be a ceasefire. I don't think we're going to see a peace anytime soon. I know that the Russians on dozens of occasions, both publicly and privately, have expressed their lack of interest in the ceasefire. And Judge Napolitano, just in Moscow to interview Sergei Lavrov, asked him, apparently, what would you think about a ceasefire? And his response was, why would we do that? Because, of course, a ceasefire would work to Ukraine's advantage. It's losing the war. The Russians are advancing. It's retreating. Its final elements in Kursk are being mopped up. And it has everything to gain from a ceasefire.
Excellent. Meanwhile, Zelensky claimed Putin is not interested in peace, will delay the deal. It is peace he's interested in. It's just not a ceasefire that could be used to beef up Ukraine, replace their troops, get them more weapons. Russian President Putin will drag out a deal for a ceasefire because he's not interested in peace. Ukrainian President Zelensky warned Thursday night. While President Trump remained optimistic about the progress of the discussions. The Ukrainian president, during his evening address, that said Putin's response to the ceasefire was very predictable. He added, Putin had demanded so many preconditions that nothing will work out at all, or that will not work out for as long as possible. This is a misreading, of course. Putin wants real peace, not a pretend. Meanwhile, here we have Putin now issuing a list of demands to achieve a 30-day ceasefire from zero hedge. Russian President Putin, in Thursday remarks, declared his forces are beating back the Ukrainians on all fronts, and especially now in Kursk. Command and control of Ukrainian troops inside the incursion zone is no longer possible, Putin said. During the first stages, the Ukrainian military attempted to leave this zone in small groups. This is no longer possible. They are leaving their military equipment behind because there's no way to evacuate it. It will remain there, that's for sure. Trump envoy Steve Witkoff is soon expected to meet with Putin again, while the Russian leader said he's for achieving a 30-day ceasefire. He's raised serious questions about what stipulation must be added. He's conveying a list of objections. We want guarantees that during the 30-year ceasefire, Ukraine will not conduct mobilization, will not train soldiers, will not receive weapons, he said during a press briefing. The president pointed out that Russian troops are advancing along nearly 2,000 kilometers of front line, and having halting military actions could disrupt ongoing operations. Ukrainian forces could use a ceasefire to regroup, receive more weapons, train fresh recruits. These 30 days, how will they be used, says Putin? To continue forced mobilization in Ukraine, to receive more arms supplies, to train newly mobilized units, or will none of this happen? Enforcing a ceasefire over such a vast battlefield would be difficult, he added. Violations could be easily disputed, leading to a blame game between both sides. Systems of control and verification to monitor a ceasefire are not in place, but should be agreed to. I think it's going to be very difficult for a ceasefire to be implemented, especially now, given this. U.S. aid, arms, intel to Ukraine is continuing now and is back to its full level prior. Very bad, very bad. Here we have American aid deliveries to Ukraine through the Rezno Jasonka logistic hub in Poland are back to their prior pace, Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski announced on March 12, as reported by a Polish outlet. I confirm that weapon shipments via Jaskona have returned to their former level. Poland consulted with Ukraine Foreign Minister Andrei Sabaya ahead of the U.S.-Ukraine talks in Saudi Arabia, following his own call with U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg. He added, let me say that's a very bad sign, and this reinforces it. Get this. Putin appears in uniform for the first time and makes a harsh statement. President Putin made a surprise appearance at the Russian Army headquarters in Kursk and made a harsh statement. He appeared in military uniform for the first time. Is this a signal to the United States and a reaction to a ceasefire offer negotiated in Saudi Arabia? Absolutely. It indicates he no longer has any faith in the West, I'll tell you. It means Russia is prepared for all-out war, I guarantee. In recent days, pressure has increased massively on Ukrainian troops who are effectively encircled in the Kursk region. Following the coup in which Russian special forces managed to sneak behind Ukrainian lines through a gas pipeline shut down by Ukraine, the encirclement began to show signs of disintegration, and on March 12th, Ukrainian High Command announced he had ordered a relocation maneuver to make to more favorable lines in the Kursk region, a rather creative euphemism for a total defeat. The same day, Russian President Putin made a surprise visit to the command in Kursk, publicly wore a military uniform, more specifically a Russian camouflage uniform, for the first time ever. This is hardly a coincidence in Russia, seen as a message to the U.S. government, which had met with Ukraine the day before in Saudi Arabia. During his visit to Kursk, Putin made a statement key points of which I'll translate and explain, containing very important statements. Our task in the future is to definitively crush the enemy who has entrenched himself in the Kursk region, still fighting there as soon as possible, to completely liberate the territory of the Kursk region, restore the situation along the state border. And of course, we must consider a security zone along the state border. All persons present in the Kursk region committing crimes against the civilian population or opposing our armed forces, law enforcement agencies, and special services are terrorists under the laws of the Russian Federation. Their actions have been classified as such by the Russian Prosecutor General's office, and the investigative committee of the Russian Federation has opened criminal proceedings against them under the article terrorism. Now, Valery Gerasimov mentioned the prisoners. Of course, we must treat these people first and foremost as terrorists within the meaning of the laws of the Russian Federation. We treat all people humanely and must treat everyone in our hands humanely in the future. At the same time, I'd like to remind you, foreign mercenaries are not covered by the 49 Geneva Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War. Very serious stuff. I'm struck. Here's his commentary. Terrorists and the Geneva Convention. Putin's announcement that all war criminals would be treated as terrorists and not as prisoner of war with corresponding protected status was a clear statement. Even more explicit, however, especially directed at the West, was a statement that foreign mercenaries are not covered by the 1949 Geneva Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War. Foreign mercenaries, therefore, do not have to be captured and treated well, but can be summarily executed as illegal combatants or treated as terrorists and sentenced accordingly. And that's going to include French troops, German troops, British troops. Get this, too. Satellite images show massive Russian bomber buildup in the north. Satellite images reveal a significant deployment of Russian military aircraft at the Olya Air Base, located on the Kola Peninsula in northwestern Russia. Russia has sent military all-terrain vehicles to the Arctic for tests. 155 NATO shell production in Ukraine hits a bureaucratic snag. Sampit T system downs Russian Sukhov, Ukraine silent on the details. The images captured showed 10 Tu-95 MS bombers owned by NATO as Bear H, alongside 35 Tu-22 M3 bombers designated Backfire C. Additionally, 5A and 12 transport planes, referred to as Cub, 3 Tu-134 UBL training aircraft called Krusty, and 4 Mi-8 choppers, known as HIP, were present. The concentration of 45 aircraft at a single base has raised questions about Russia's intentions, especially given the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the base's proximity to NATO borders. Well, I don't think there's any intent here to attack NATO unless NATO plans to attack Russia, in which case, under international law, they have the right to a first strike, a defensive first strike in the face of an imminent threat. Meanwhile, this fascinating story about the pipeline has been elaborated upon. We burst out unexpectedly like demons. How Russia's pipeline operation crushed Ukrainian defenses in Kursk. The mission to help liberate Kursk region took place under harsh conditions, soldiers displaying remarkable bravery, forcing the enemy to retreat. The Russian army has conducted a major counteroffensive in Kursk, which was invaded by Ukrainian forces in August of 2024. In just the past 24 hours, Russian troops have liberated 12 settlements, recaptured over 100 square kilometers. This week, the industrial zone of Zudzai, the largest Russian city under the control of the Ukrainian forces of Ukraine, was also retaken. They used a pipeline that had been shut down by Ukraine that is 4.5 by 4.5. In other words, that's actually the diameter, I believe. And 800 Russian military crawled through this space in order to come out on the other side. And it was, I thought it was over a mile long. Really fascinating what happened here to completely surprise the Ukrainians and send them into a tailspin. Meanwhile, you do best. Could Europe take on Russia alone?
Important to note that this war did not have to even begin. It didn't need to take place, except the Americans and the Europeans dismissed and totally denied any possibility for not even negotiations, but dialogue prior to Russia's invasion in February 2022. But that also, too, at various points during this war, negotiations could have been carried out. Of course, people are familiar with the early attempts at negotiations immediately after the start of the war, immediately after the invasion, that would have resulted in hundreds of thousands of lives being spared and likely no territorial concessions by Ukraine. And now here we are 3 years later, where hundreds of thousands have been killed and wounded, vast areas of Ukraine destroyed, parts of Russia destroyed, and the reality that Russia is winning, that the Ukrainians no longer have the backing of the United States the way they did under the Biden administration. And so what you just described there in the sense of Zelensky doing some about faces is the reality that he cannot continue this war without the American support. And so he's willing to accept whatever's being offered now. And the whole great shame of it, of course, is, as I said, that the loss of hundreds of thousands of men, 10,000 civilians as well, for something that could have been diplomatically resolved more than 3 years ago.
This is Matthew Hugh with Daniel Dave. Assumed Tulsi wanted to add as a deputy, but was defeated by opposition from AIPAC. Very bad. He's a former Marine Corps captain like myself. Meanwhile, Russian nightmare. Ultra-quiet stealth submarines can unleash a nuclear holocaust upon America in just minutes. We need to understand the seriousness of the Russian military capabilities. We are not equal. We are not on the same level. Russian subs are known from their advanced stealth capabilities. They currently have 64 subs operational. Many are equipped with ultra-quiet features, making them incredibly difficult to detect. When we think of nuclear war, we tend to think of missiles fired from thousands of miles away. Or the Russians could simply move a couple dozen ultra-quiet subs alongside our coastline, both the Atlantic and the Pacific, and conduct a sneak attack. They don't even have to be a sneak attack from point-blank range. Major cities on both coasts, including Washington, D.C., would be destroyed almost instantly. Other major targets deep inside the continental U.S. would be wiped out within just a few minutes. Now, this is not necessarily for a sneak attack, but for defense, for Russia responding to an attack by the U.S. or NATO or what have you, should it be so provoked. And remember, actually, WHO was underplaying the number of Ukrainians who've died. It's over 1 million. Russia, 100 to 150,000, totally disproportionate. Meanwhile, IDF reserve commanders turning to Israel say they're struggling to fill their ranks. Well, should that be a surprise? Haaretz report says hundreds of wanted ads posted daily by reserve units with commanders seeming to cut corners or discriminate in recruitment. IDF claims officially no drastic manpower shortage, but I'm sure it's real. Reserve commanders in the military are turning to social media to recruit soldiers amid a continuing decline in the response rate of those called up to serve.
supertea.com or call us at 818-965-9113, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-965-9113. drinksupertea.com.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
Several years ago, I was developing a very severe situation. I called it my flippy heart. It was doing not good things, and I did not want to go to a medical doctor because I just knew they would give me a cover-up pill. I didn't want to get onto that sort of thing at all. When I learned it was garlic and cayenne is a healer. It is a wonderful herb. I said, I think I'm onto something here. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be without it. It did wonderful things for me.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Did you know the IRS publicly admits that income tax is collected by voluntary compliance? Get the information you need to help you avoid income tax with these 5 easy steps. All you have to do is go to avoidincometax.com to get your 5 easy steps on how to avoid the IRS income tax. Escape the IRS. Let avoidincometax.com help you. We guarantee our 5 easy steps or your money back. Go to avoidincometax.com.
Susanna's Secret, Real Essential Oils of Nature, would like to thank you and RBN listeners for your previous purchases. We're announcing that we have a new waterless diffuser in stock with a full 1-year warranty. You just insert the bottle to the top, screw it in, tip it upside down, set your timer, or it's also motion activated at FURION.com. That's FURION.com. That's FURION.com.
Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, I say it's alright.
Well, we have other reports here, including an Israeli minister. Get this. An Israeli minister says God sent Trump to help build Jewish settlements in Gaza. Can you believe? This is close to declaring him to be the Mashiach. Idit Silman, the Israeli Minister of Environmental Protection, said on Tuesday, and I'm hearing a lot of interference, Mike, a lot of static, said on Tuesday that God had sent the Trump admin to advance the goal of ethnic cleansing in Gaza and the building of Jewish settlements in the Strip. According to Haaretz, Silman, a member of PM Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party, said the government is committed to the idea of encouraging immigration and added, he believes God has sent us, the U.S. administration, and it is clearly telling us it is time to inherit the land, meaning remove all remaining Palestinians. God sent Trump to help them do that. Meanwhile, Thomas Massey explains that Israel is creating mass hatred of the United States.
Israel's creating hundreds of thousands of people who are going to hate the United States because we're giving Israel the weapons to do what they're doing. We're creating a lot of people who hate us in this country. There's a foreign interest group called AIPAC that's, got the ear of this current speaker and demanded 16 votes in April on Israel or the Middle East. We haven't had 16 votes in April on the United States in Congress.
There's a fundamental question. So the Biden administration has put a bunch of people in jail for violating something called FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, 1936-ish. It's been on the books for, 90 years. The law requires people who lobby on behalf of foreign governments to register. It's that simple. And this is the largest lobby most effective lobby in the United States on behalf of a foreign government. Are they registered with FARA?
They're not, but they should be.
Well, how can that be? How can they put Paul Manafort in jail, which they did, on a FARA violation and a bunch of other people in jail on FARA violations, but the largest and most effective and most feared foreign lobby working for a foreign government doesn't have to register under the law. That's insane.
Yes.
Israel is creating hundreds of thousands of people who are going to hate the United States because we're giving Israel the weapons to do what they're doing. We're creating a lot of people who hate us in this country.
He's got it exactly right. And that's somebody Trump wants to pillory politically. He's already talked about running a well-financed candidate against him. Bad. Massey's good. Trump opposing him. Bad. Meanwhile, Syria military operation over, but killing of Alawite civilians continues. Hundreds are being beheaded by the government in Syria. Syria's HTS declared their military op against the Alawites over Monday evening, but their execution of Alawite civilians has not halted. The number of civilians executed before Monday has also been rising further as more are counted. At least 17 were killed in the Northwest Coast since Monday. The largest confirmed incident in Jable. A witness said militia members aligned with the government entered the Alawite neighborhood, took 10 men from their homes, shot them in the street. The witness said some of the militia members appeared to be Chechen, which is in keeping with the report that HTS has absorbed a lot of foreign Sunni Islamists into its security forces and their associated militias. In other words, there's a slaughter going on in Syria. Meanwhile, Iran's president refuses to talks, telling Trump, do whatever the hell you want. Iran is prepared to deal with it. Iranian president echoes the supreme leader's refusal to talk while being bullied. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, has ruled out talks with the U.S. while being threatened, according to Iranian state media. It's unacceptable for us that they, the U.S., give orders and make threats. I won't even negotiate with you. Do whatever the hell you want. Iran said Friday it's not prepared to negotiate a new nuclear deal with the U.S. after President Trump revealed he had sent a letter to the supreme leader asking for talks. Trump is doing a lot of bullying, a lot of threatening. It's not going down well. People, foreign leaders, are not impressed. EU, meanwhile, says countermeasures to Trump's tariffs are going to take effect next week. Canada and the EU swiftly retaliate against Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. Tokyo, meanwhile, I think picking up on the whole idea of reparations that we've heard here, was filled with charred corpses after U.S. firebombing 80 years ago. Survivors want compensation. Where have we heard that before? Though this case might be very deserving. Meanwhile, China unveils Jukanzai 3, a quantum supercomputer, 1 million times faster than Google's. Did you get that? China has a new quantum supercomputer that's 1 million times faster than Google's. Think about it.
The truth.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network. Real news, real talk, real people. Because you can handle the truth.
Hey there, this is Sheila with Hemp Paste by Minutra. Why is hemp paste better than other CBD options on the market? It's important to point out that the common CBD oil does not contain CBDA or CBGA, and they're only found in fresh or raw hemp products, like hemp paste. Hemp paste contains the entire plant, minus any stems. This means the product retains the complete genetic code of the plant, which also includes those two vital cannabinoids, CBGA and CBDA. Over and over, experts keep saying the more intact or less processed the hemp plant is, the more effective it is. Happy hemp paste.
Hemppaste.com/RBN.
free shipping on orders over $50. See the banners for hemp paste at republicbroadcasting.org and visit hemppaste.com/RBN.
Call 855-656-8872. Mention RBN.
Do you begin to smell some funky little things going on? Let me share this story with you. It's not so much a story, it's something I wrote years ago. Read your history, people. Stock markets collapse on Friday. Bank seizures, closures, holidays take place after business hours on Friday. Do currencies or governments also collapse on Friday? Tomorrow's Friday. Will the end come on this Friday, or will the inevitable collapse hold off for a while? The next round of the worst financial crisis in 100 years is coming, people, and the government is out to make you and I pay for it. And will your savings survive a global banking wipeout? What happens when the U.S. sees hyperinflation? What if taxes soar not only for the rich? Can you survive if the stock market tanks? Look, between a stock market wipeout, waves of bank failures, soaring government spending that will lead to hyperinflation, and the destruction of the dollar's value, isn't it time that you prepare for the uncertainty which lies ahead? Protect your money now, or forever kiss it goodbye. My friends, I offer you over 6 decades experience of hard asset ownership and knowledge, and I'm prepared to handle the smallest detail in the balanced protection of your portfolio. For as the future of uncertainty continues to blanket this nation of ours, I believe that I can offer you the privacy, safety, security, and possibly some profitability which you deserve. And so I invite you to visit SierraMadrePreciousMetals.com for further information regarding protecting your wealth. Or call me, Jeffrey Bennett, at 602-799-8214. Or by email at kettlemoraine.ltd@cox.net for private consultation. Once again, our phone number 602-799-8214. It's almost Friday.
Here are 3 stories about domestic politics I find a bit peculiar. Trump calls Schumer a Palestinian while defending the GOP spending bill, egg prices, and tariff policies. The comment came during a meeting with Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin as Republicans try to get a government spending bill enacted before funding runs out on Friday evening. That would be tonight. President Trump Wednesday called Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer a Palestinian as he defended the government spending bill and its policies on corporate taxes and rising grocery prices. Schumer is a Palestinian as far as I'm concerned, Trump said in response to a question about U.S. corporate tax rate during an Oval Office meeting with the Irish Prime Minister. He's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. Very odd. Here's another. Trump denies plans to expel Gazans. What in the world? Where is this coming from? During the press conference, Trump dismissed claims of expelling Palestinians, even though that was the core of his plan to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Mediterranean. During the press conference with the Irish Prime Minister, a journalist questioned whether Martin, who's the Irish Prime Minister, would address claims that Trump intends to forcibly remove Palestinians from Gaza. Before Martin could respond, Trump cut in, rejecting the premise. Nobody's expelling any Palestinians, he said. Martin reiterated Ireland's constant push for a ceasefire, adding, "We wanted a consolidated peace, and we want the hostages out, as I've been saying from day one." Very odd. Here's another. Trump calls Biden a bad Palestinian in a U.S. debate jab. This was in relation to the election in 2024. This is back on 28 June 2024, just to put this in context. Both candidates failed to address Palestinian suffering, the toll of Israel's war on Gaza as protesters rally near the venue. Republican Donald Trump has called U.S. President Biden a very bad Palestinian who doesn't want to help Israel finish a job against Hamas and its war on Gaza. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one. Former President Trump said on his first presidential debate with Biden Thursday in Atlanta, Georgia. Very odd. I think that reflects deeply had Jewish attitudes toward the Palestinians. Not good. Meanwhile, get this. USAID funded a Ukrainian group that smeared Vice President Vance as a pro-Russian propagandist. U.S. President Donald Trump has lambasted USAID for absurd foreign expenditures, but Trump has omitted perhaps the most scandalous in Ukraine. The U.S.-funded groups that defamed the U.S. Vice President, members of Congress, and U.S. journalists as foreign propagandists while training Iranians in PSYOP tactics were funded by USAID. The U.S. government funded a Ukrainian military intel firm that smeared U.S. Vice President Vance, U.S. Counterterrorism Director Joe Kent, and Representative Thomas Massie as foreign propagandists of the Russian Federation. How ridiculous can you get? Meanwhile, USAID employees are told to burn or shred classified documents. An organization representing foreign service workers said it was alarmed by the directive because there could be documents relevant to ongoing litigation, not to mention investigations. The U.S. Agency for International Development is instructing its staff in Washington to shred and burn documents, according to an email obtained by NBC News. The move comes as President Trump's admin faces legal challenges over its attempt to shut down the federal agency, which I hope will be completely successful. However, get this, judge orders thousands of federal workers reinstated, slams a sham government declaration. Now, let me say, I believe this is a clear violation of the separation of powers, that a member of the judiciary branch, a judge, cannot be telling the head of the executive branch, the president, how to run his shop. I believe this is wrong. On the other hand, I had a conversation with a friend who agreed with me on the separation of powers point, but said he's worried the Supreme Court might nevertheless support the judge anyway. Meanwhile, Trump throws his support behind Dodge as Musk gets high praise. This is one side of the coin. Here we have Trump talking about it.
Welcome back. Longtime deal maker, former real estate titan, and now two-time commander-in-chief. President Trump has been luring deep-pocketed investors and companies to invest in America since returning to the White House, locking up commitments of some $2 trillion into the United States in his first month back in office. The president told me about his next conquest, the Panama Canal, after news this week that an American company, BlackRock, will acquire 2 ports operating around the Panama Canal from Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison for $23 billion.
China essentially had it. It was a China-based company. I'd much rather deal with BlackRock than a China-based company. And BlackRock is fine. I knew they were doing that. I was totally okay with it.
And when you go through the Panama
Makes it
Canal,
easier.
give us a sense of
Jimmy
how China
Carter
has dominated.
The Carter administration gave the Panama Canal for $1, gave the Panama Canal to Panama for no reason. They had a little demonstration of a few people. And he did give it. It's the most expensive thing we've ever built in the history of our country, relatively. In other words, if you bring it up in today's dollars. We lost 38,000 people to the mosquito and to snakes. Snakes are vicious. They had a very vicious snake. If you got bit, you were in big trouble.
Wow.
But mostly to mosquitoes, malaria. And we built this incredible thing, the eighth wonder of the world, right?
I don't know how much faith he has in BlackRock, which seemed to me to be out to own the entire world. Meanwhile, here are the military units deploying to the U.S.-Mexico border. About 590 soldiers from Army engineer units, 40 Air Force intel analysts headed to the southern border. Timeline for their deployment is still to be determined. U.S. Northern Command announced Monday more than 600 soldiers and airmen will deploy to the southern border as part of the U.S. military's ongoing operation to stem illegal immigration. I'm telling you, there's going to be a war going on down there. Meanwhile, it may have already begun. Meanwhile, disturbing. DEI activists caught on voicemail allegedly helping minorities cheat on air traffic control exams, potentially endangering millions of lives. I mean, that's a very demanding practice, air traffic control. This is very bad. Shocking audio has emerged revealing how a radical DEI activist tried to help minority candidate cheat on an entrance exam and put lives in danger in the process. The Daily Mail Wednesday reported that Shelton Snow, a key figure in the National Black Coalition of Federal Aviation Employees, vowing to tell the minorities advance answers to the entry exam. There are some valuable pieces of information I've taken a screenshot of. I'm going to send that to you via email. Just think of it, getting incompetent people managing our air traffic. Can you imagine the plane crashes that will result? Meanwhile, what's the situation when anti-war protesters are called national security threats? This affects me profoundly. We're talking about responsible statecraft. Is this what VP Vance meant by free speech in retreat? Case of detained green card holder shows how brittle our rights are here now. Vice President Vance stunned Europe at the Munich Security Conference in February, calling the continent out for serious backsliding on core democratic principles. He cited annulled elections when the wrong candidate appears slated to win, digital censorship of opinions that run afoul of the majority or established perspective, and the policing of silent thought or prayer as exhibits A, B, and C. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. Well, look at what's going on right here in the U.S. The Trump admin is trying to deport Mahmoud Khalil for speech contrary to U.S. foreign policy, just as Vance was accusing the Europeans. The Trump admin is trying to deport 30-year-old Mohammed Khalil, a green card holder, arrested by ICE agents over the weekend for activity that is contrary to U.S. foreign policy, based on his involvement in protests critical of Israel's war on Gaza at Columbia University. A White House official told the Free Press Khalil's activity was a threat to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States. The allegation here is not that he was breaking the law. The official told the Free Press he was mobilizing support for Hamas and spreading anti-Semitism in a way that's contrary to the foreign policy of the U.S. Well, look, he's actually opposing genocide. He's pro-Palestinian. That may be contrary to the foreign policy of the United States, but under the First Amendment, he's got the right to do it. I think they're using the green card thing to put him in a special status, but it's wrong. Meanwhile, here's Tulsi canceling appointment of an Israel critic after the Israel lobby complains, I don't like this at all. Cancel culture is alive and well under the Trump admin when it comes to critics of Israel. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard attempt to appoint Israel critic Daniel Davis for the position of Deputy DNI for Mission Integration was scuttled at the last minute Wednesday in response to complaints from the Israeli lobby and their mouthpieces. The Israeli lobby, which ought to be registered under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, but is not. Jewish Insider first put out a hit piece lobbying for Davis to be canceled, and the Anti-Defamation League and Mark Levin joined in on the campaign. He's actually a very good guy, very mild-mannered, very sensible, interviews people like McGregor and Scott Ritter all the time. Here's a nice piece, by the way. Mr. Trump, you would have been lucky to have Daniel Davis on your team. The retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel was reportedly up for a job with Tulsi, but was a target of a smear campaign. Earlier today, the Jewish Insider magazine ran a story saying the White House tapped retired Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis for Deputy Director of National Intelligence, working under the newly confirmed DNI Tulsi Gabbard. It was a hit piece by a pro-Israel platform that primarily focused on Davis's critical views, published only in articles and on his popular podcast on Gaza and Iran. Within hours, he was informed there would be no job. Very bad indeed. When you have excellent people who would make a difference for the good being pilloried. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi says, get this, Israeli national security information will be redacted from the Epstein files. Israeli national security information will be redacted from the Epstein files. What the hell would that be, Israeli national security? Because this was a Mossad op. This was intended to, entrap American politicians so they could be blackmailed by Israel. By Israel. Have no doubt about it. That's what's going on here. And in my opinion, it's very bad. Meanwhile, the media finally admitted lockdowns destroyed us, exactly what we were all saying 5 years ago. This is from Revolver. What finally happened 5 years later, the mainstream media has caught on to the real science and facts and declared the lockdowns, these were from COVID, were a disaster and actually did more harm than good. Lockdowns were never really effective. New research showed COVID stay-at-home order did more harm than good. 5 years later, lockdown critics faced death threats and censorship. Now they're gaining influence among new evidence of the harmful health effects of prolonged isolation. Oh, Mike, I thought we'd hit the break. Thank you. Trump family held deal talks with Beyonce's U.S. arm, the Wall Street Journal has reported. This is at least mildly disconcerting. Reuters. Representative of President Donald Trump's family have held talks with a financial stake in the U.S. arm of crypto exchange Beyonce, the Wall Street Journal reported Thursday. Beyonce billionaire founder Changpeng Zhao had been pushing for the Trump admin to grant him a pardon. The report added, citing people familiar with the matter. In November of 2023, Zhao stepped down as CEO of Beyonce and pled guilty to breaking U.S. anti-money laundering laws as part of a $4.3 billion settlement, resolving a years-long probe into the world's largest crypto exchange. Beyonce had reached out to allies of Trump last year, offering to strike a business deal with a family as part of a plan to return the exiled company to the U.S., according to the Journal report. This just sounds too much like the Biden crime family in all of its influence. Bad, bad, bad.
When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind, I'll open up the door.
You're an avid reader or lover of history.
You are searching for your inner rebel. It can be found at the Dixie Republic. It's the world's largest Confederate store, located in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. The anti-white, anti-Christ, anti-Southern world ends at the asphalt. Welcome to God's country. Log on to thedixierepublic.com to view all of their Southern merchandise, from flags to T-shirts to artwork. At the store, browse through their extensive collection of belt buckles and have a custom-made leather belt handcrafted in their Johnny Reb gun and leather shop. Now remember, DixieRepublic.com, where you can meet all of your Southern needs.
Charles de Gaulle once said,
If you're an avid reader or lover of history or both, then I invite you to purchase Blood in the Ozarks by Clint Lacey. The book delves into a controversial and often overlooked chapter of the American Civil War, specifically focusing on Union war crimes against Southern sympathizers and civilians in occupied Missouri. It centers on the massacre that took place on Christmas Day, 1863, in Ripley County, Missouri, where Union Major James Wilson's 3rd Missouri State Militia Cavalry attacked a gathering of Confederate supporters, including men, women, and children, and the elderly. Lacey aims to shed light on this event known as the Wilson Massacre by presenting a narrative that challenges the conventional historical accounts by providing evidence from local documents, eyewitnesses, newspaper articles, and military records. The book has been praised for its effort to bring forth a nuanced understanding of the brutality of the Civil War in Missouri, emphasizing the need to acknowledge all aspects of this tumultuous period. Lacey's work is commended for its thorough research and commitment to uncovering obscure truths in American history. And you can purchase it at foothillsmedia.net. That's foothillsmedia.net to purchase your copy of Blood in the Ozarks.
Great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit drinksupertea.com. The first word is drink, spelled D-R-I-N-K, then the word super, then the word tea. The complete website is drinksupertea.com. Or call us at 818-965-9113, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-965-9113, drinksupertea.com.
Two final stories. Democrats struggle to navigate transgender athletes in women's sports debate. The great debate over whether biological males should compete in women's sports continues its slow-motion train wreck course, leaving Democrats scratching their heads and retreating to a position that sounds suspiciously like, let's not talk about it. The left had pinned their hopes on this issue as the new Rosa Parks moment, but it turns out the only thing being bussed around is confusion and absurdity. It didn't take long for common sense to rear its head. Not only here, but across the pond in England, where the grand social experiment surrounding puberty blockers for kids has booted out faster than a bad Tinder date. Gavin Newsom, California's governor, an officially sanctioned spokesman for what not to do, recently sat down with conservative firebrand Charlie Kirk to discuss the fairness or lack thereof of allowing trans athletes to compete against women. Newsom acknowledged what many already see as a gaping hole in leftist logic. The tide might be turning as it's become more apparent that the only ones laughing about the situation are conservatives who've been trying to get a rational discussion into the ring. The overwhelming majority of voters seem to agree that men competing against women is decidedly unfair, yet Democrats are still stumbling over themselves trying to navigate the wreckage of their own policies. And finally, Kevin Barrett has a nice discussion about Mike Palachuk's latest book, Common Sense, which I've also featured on my blog at jameshfetzer.org. Now let me mention, Mike Palachuk had in the past published a book about Kevin and me. We did a radio show together on Genesis called The Dynamic Duo. We've been involved in many, many efforts, which he regarded as out to defeat the emergence of fascism in the United States. Thus, there's the original edition, which is the size of a small encyclopedia, but where I created a new edition, White Rose Blooms in Wisconsin, for Moonrock Books, and added a whole lot of photographs that weren't in the original. If any of you are interested in Kevin and me and all of our efforts to, preserve democracy in the United States, you might want to check it out. Here's Kevin. Novelist and former mainstream jurist Mike Palachuk just published Common Sense. Watch Mike read for it during our short interview in the above video, or read the selection below. Very nice book, of which he has published many.